Have you ever heard of a general who marched an army of elephants over the snowy Alps to attack his enemy? It sounds like something from a fantasy epic, but it really happened, right in the middle of one of the most monumental conflicts in ancient history, the Punic Wars. For over a century, two ancient superpowers, Rome and Carthage, were locked in a titanic struggle. This wasn't just a series of battles. It was a clash of civilizations that would decide the fate of the Mediterranean and ultimately shape the course of Western history. Rome, the rising land power on the Italian peninsula, hungry and ambitious. And Carthage, the established maritime empire from modern-day Tunisia, controlling vast trade networks across the sea. Their collision was inevitable. So, how did it all begin? It started on the island of Sicily, a strategic gem located right between them. In 264 BC, a seemingly minor conflict in the city of Messana pulled both powers in. Rome, seeing a chance to expand its influence beyond Italy, sent its legions. Carthage, unwilling to let its rival gain a foothold so close to its territories, responded in kind. And just like that, the First Punic War was ignited. This initial war was a brutal, 23-year-long slog, fought mostly at sea. Now, you have to remember, Rome was a land-based power. Their strength was their legions, their disciplined infantry. They weren't sailors. Carthage, on the other hand, had the most powerful navy in the Mediterranean. It was like a rhino trying to fight a shark in the ocean. Initially, the Romans were getting crushed. They lost fleet after fleet to Carthaginian naval superiority and a series of devastating storms. But if there's one thing you need to know about the Romans, it's that they never, ever gave up. They were masters of adaptation. They captured a wrecked Carthaginian warship, a quinquereme, and reverse-engineered it. They built hundreds of copies, but they knew they still couldn't outsail the Carthaginians. So, they invented a secret weapon, the corvus, or the crow. Imagine a massive heavy boarding bridge, about 36 feet long, mounted on the front of their ships. At the end of it was a heavy, pointed spike. When an enemy ship got close, they would drop the corvus, and the spike would slam into the enemy's deck, locking the two ships together. Suddenly, the naval battle became a land battle on water. Roman legionaries would swarm across the bridge, turning the tide with their superior swordsmanship. It was genius. It was brutal, and it worked. After years of grinding warfare and immense losses on both sides, Rome finally defeated the Carthaginian navy and won the First Punic War, taking control of Sicily and Sardinia. But this was only round one. The peace was fragile, and resentment simmered in Carthage. A powerful Carthaginian general named Hamilcar Barca, who had fought bitterly in Sicily, was forced to accept the humiliating terms of defeat. Legend says that he made his young son swear a sacred oath on an altar, to forever be an enemy of Rome. That son's name was Hannibal, and he would grow up to become Rome's greatest nightmare. After the First War, Carthage looked to Spain to rebuild its empire and its wealth. It was here that Hannibal Barca came into his own. He was a military prodigy, charismatic, brilliant, and utterly ruthless. When Rome tried to limit Carthaginian expansion in Spain, Hannibal saw his chance. In 218 BC, he deliberately attacked a city allied with Rome, triggering the Second Punic War, the one everyone remembers. Rome expected to fight him in Spain, or maybe even in Africa. They never imagined what he would do next. Instead of a conventional war, Hannibal decided on the most audacious military maneuver in history. He gathered his army tens of thousands of infantry, thousands of cavalry, and, most famously, a contingent of war elephants. He crossed the Pyrenees Mountains, fought his way through hostile tribes in Gaul, and then he faced the Alps. Imagine the scene. It's late autumn, snow is already falling. His army, full of soldiers from warm North Africa and Spain, is freezing. The paths are narrow and treacherous. They're being attacked by mountain tribes. The elephants, terrified and unsuited for the cold, are slipping and falling into chasms. It was a logistical nightmare, a gamble of epic proportions. Thousands of men and animals perished. But after 15 days of hell, Hannibal emerged on the other side, in the plains of northern Italy. He had done the impossible. The Romans were in shock. An enemy army had appeared in their backyard. They sent consul after consul, army after army, to stop him. And Hannibal, with his depleted but battle-hardened forces, outmaneuvered and crushed them every single time. At the Trebia River, he used the cold and a brilliant ambush to annihilate a Roman army. At Lake Trasimene, he trapped an entire Roman force in a narrow pass and slaughtered them in a thick fog. But his masterpiece of tactics came in 216 BC, at a place called Cannae. Hannibal was outnumbered, facing the largest army Rome had ever assembled, some 80,000 men. Any other general would have been crushed, but Hannibal turned his disadvantage into a weapon. He placed his weakest troops, the Gauls, in the center of his line, bulging forward. He put his elite African infantry on the flanks, held back. As the battle began, the massive Roman legions pushed forward, easily driving back Hannibal's weak center. It felt like an easy victory, but this was exactly what Hannibal wanted. His center fell back, but it didn't break. It bent inwards. drawing the Romans deeper and deeper into a U-shaped pocket. And then, Hannibal gave the signal. His elite infantry on the wings slammed shut like a trap. At the same time, his superior cavalry, having defeated their Roman counterparts, circled around and attacked the Roman rear. The Roman army was completely surrounded. What followed was one of the single bloodiest days in military history. Trapped with no room to fight, the legionaries were cut down by the thousands. By the end of the day, as many as 50,000 to 70,000 Romans were dead. It was a catastrophe of unimaginable scale for Rome. The city was gripped by panic. Hannibal was at the gates. But here's the strange part. Hannibal didn't march on Rome. Why? Historians still debate it. Perhaps he lacked the siege equipment. Perhaps he hoped Rome's allies would desert them and the Republic would collapse on its own. Whatever the reason, this gave Rome the one thing it needed: time. Rome returned to its old ways. They refused to surrender. They appointed a dictator named Fabius Maximus, whose strategy was to avoid direct battle with Hannibal at all costs. He shadowed Hannibal's army, harassing his supply lines, and wearing him down through a war of attrition. This earned him the nickname the Cunctator, or the Delayer. It was frustrating, but it saved Rome. Meanwhile, a new Roman hero was emerging, Scipio. While Hannibal was running rampant in Italy, Scipio took the fight to the Carthaginians in Spain, conquering their territories and cutting off Hannibal's supply of men and resources. Then, Scipio did what Hannibal had done to Rome. He invaded Carthage's homeland in North Africa. This forced Carthage to recall Hannibal from Italy to defend his own city. The final showdown came in 202 BC at the Battle of Zama. It was the clash of the titans, Hannibal versus Scipio. Hannibal had his elephants, but Scipio had studied his tactics. When the elephants charged, the Roman soldiers simply blew loud horns and opened lanes in their formation, letting the panicked beasts run harmlessly through. Then, with the cavalry battle won by the Romans, Scipio used Hannibal's own encirclement tactics against him. The Carthaginian army was defeated. Hannibal had finally lost. The Second Punic War was over. Carthage was stripped of its empire, its navy, and forced to pay a massive indemnity. Rome was the undisputed master of the Western Mediterranean, but even then, some in Rome couldn't let go of the hatred and fear. A famous senator, Cato the Elder, ended every speech he gave, no matter the topic, with the same phrase, Cato go, Carthage must be destroyed. About 50 years later, Rome found a flimsy pretext to start the Third Punic War. This wasn't really a war, it was a siege. The city of Carthage held out heroically for 3 years, but the outcome was never in doubt. In 146 BC, the Romans breached the walls. What followed was a week of brutal street-to-street fighting. When it was over, the once mighty city of Carthage was utterly annihilated. The survivors were sold into slavery, and the city was razed to the ground. Legend says the Romans even sowed salt into the earth so that nothing would ever grow there again. The Punic Wars were over. From a regional Italian power, Rome had transformed into a vast empire. The wealth, the power, the military experience gained in this long struggle set the stage for its domination of the entire Mediterranean world. It's a story of incredible resilience, brilliant strategy, and the brutal reality of ancient warfare, proving that history is often decided not just by battles, but by the will to endure. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this dive into ancient history as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next journey into the past. Let me know in the comments which historical conflict you'd like to see covered next. Until then, stay curious.